Hello, Jack Kent Cooke Young Scholars. I am thrilled to be here and talk to you tonight. I am, of course, reminded of when I attended Welcome Weekend 9 years ago in 2008. I was here with my mom, who is entirely the reason that I became a Young Scholar in the first place. She was the one who received a pamphlet about the program in the mail and encouraged me to apply. Okay, actually, she insisted that I apply because at the time I wasn't really crazy about filling out a 30-page application, but she made sure it got done, got in the mail, sent it on time. So thank you, Mom. And thank you to all of the parents and family here tonight who have supported and sacrificed for your children so that they could get this far. Clearly, you've done something right. So for all of the family here tonight, can we get a round of applause? But despite my mom's support, she was still a little uneasy when she came to Welcome Weekend. She was wondering, who is this advisor who's going to be talking to my son every week? And who's going to look after my baby when he goes off to these summer programs? So if there are any family or scholars here tonight who are still a little confused about what it's all about, I totally sympathize with you. And I trust that you will leave this weekend with a better understanding of the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation and the role it will play in your life over the next 4 years and beyond. When I think back to my Welcome Weekend, the memory that always makes me smile is what it felt like to fly on a plane for the first time from my hometown in South Louisiana to the campus of Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. I was actually excited to go through airport security because I had never done it before. Before Welcome Weekend, actually I had never flown or even left the South at all. My family didn't take vacations to Europe or Hawaii. The fact of the matter is we couldn't afford to travel. And at Welcome Weekend, when we were served a formal 3-course banquet dinner, not unlike what we're enjoying tonight, that was also unlike anything I'd ever experienced. My family couldn't afford to go out to restaurants ever. I remember in 6th grade helping Mom check the balance on her EBT card before we went to Walmart for groceries. We were poor, not in terms of love and respect for one another, but economically, we were impoverished. A lot has changed for me since then. I've since flown on planes many times to attend academic summer programs at Duke University and Brown University, to study abroad in London, to speak at the White House and shake hands with President Obama, to enroll at Dartmouth College where I would graduate magna cum laude with highest honors. These opportunities to travel, to learn, and to be seen and heard have literally and metaphorically broadened my horizons. So as I look back on doing these things for the first time at Welcome Weekend in 2008, flying on planes and eating fancy food, those experiences symbolize how the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation would forever change my life. The Jack Kent Cooke Foundation scholarships have allowed me to become socially mobile. By a show of hands, who knows what I mean when I say social mobility? Okay, thank you. What I mean by social mobility is that I've been able to enter new parts of society that were not attainable to me before. I've moved out of the working class, thereby attaining some degree of what economists would refer to as social capital. Because I have a degree from an elite university and all of the opportunities that come along with that, I can submit my resume to an employer and earn a job that pays me enough to live in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I have a network of people across the country who could help me get a job. By virtue of this social mobility, I have more agency, I have more options, more doors are open to me. Of course, I wasn't thinking about any of this when I came to Welcome Weekend in 2008. I was thinking about the Duke Tip summer program that I was about to attend after Welcome Weekend. And at that Duke Tip program, where I studied psychology, I had a fabulous time. I loved being among motivated, curious students who loved to learn, not unlike those young scholars I had just met. However, it was at this very first summer program that I began realizing that my personal background was not like the other students. For example, I remember one day at the lunch table that someone explained, Their parents made them choose only one summer program to attend that year because they were already paying $20,000 a year to go to private school. And I hadn't even thought about how expensive the Duke Tip program was. I kept silent about the fact that I was there on a scholarship. And when I went home a few weeks later, I went online and learned that the program was about $6,000. If not for the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation, my family would never have dreamed of paying for that. That fall, when I went back to my Louisiana public school, I remember feeling bored in my classes. I couldn't help but compare them to those I had taken during the summer. They weren't as challenging, and my teachers didn't seem as interested in their subjects. Thankfully, the Young Scholars Program allowed me to continue to challenge myself by taking online AP classes and enrolling in another summer program for the next year. But the discord I felt between my Louisiana public school and the expensive programs that the foundation afforded persisted. I kept thinking, why is it fair that I should be the only one at my school to get these opportunities? There were other students at my school who also sometimes felt bored. They would have had just as amazing a time as I did at the Duke Tip summer program. But they weren't so fortunate as to be Jack Kent Cooke scholars. They couldn't afford and didn't know about $6,000 summer programs. As the years went on, I became good friends with a girl from the Duke Tip summer programs. Let's call her Jane. When I was a junior in high school, I went to spend a week with Jane in Connecticut. Her lifestyle was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. When I first stepped into her enormous home, I was surprised to be greeted by two grand staircases in the foyer. But what surprised me more than that was how relaxed her family was. There was no worry about money. Imagine that, a life where you didn't have to worry about money. Her father made so much that her mother was able to retire and focus on supporting Jane's education, whether that be taking her to private violin lessons, helping her research colleges, or even cooking healthy meals so that Jane didn't have to cook for herself. What shocked me the most was that they could afford to go to Starbucks multiple times a day and never thought anything of it. I realized most of the students at those Duke Tip programs probably lived like that. The next year, as seniors in high school, Jane and I applied to college. The Jack Kent Cooke Foundation was more involved in my life than ever, helping me navigate the very confusing and expensive process of applying to selective universities. My parents didn't know the first thing about applying to college. Meanwhile, the guidance counselor at my high school didn't even know what the Common Application was, and she missed the deadline to write my required letter of recommendation. I had to storm into her office and make her write the recommendation on the spot, and thankfully my colleges accepted it 2 weeks late. But you can tell how equipped my high school was to elevate its students' educational aspirations. That spring, Jane and I both got accepted to Harvard and Yale and Duke and Dartmouth and other top universities. So did the other students I had met at those prestigious summer programs over the years. And so did my peers in the Young Scholars Program. My peers at my public high school, however, did not. In fact, I was the only person in my graduating class to go to college outside of Louisiana. What I realized was that the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation had effectively leveled the playing field. Where my family couldn't afford expensive summer programs and private music lessons like Jane's, the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation stepped in. And when my high school didn't have the first clue about applying to top universities, the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation, specifically my fantastic educational advisors Wes and Sarah, helped me. So I graduated high school, and I was going to the Ivy League. I felt lucky, I felt grateful, I felt proud, but I also felt troubled. I had grown to understand that for most students, the playing field is anything but level. And then, when I got to Dartmouth that fall, I felt like a total outsider. It seemed like everyone around me was super rich and weren't afraid to let me know it. I'll never forget on move-in day, I came alone, but my two roommates came with their parents. And surprise, surprise, their parents knew each other from the same country club in Manhattan's Upper East Side. The sentiment across the student body was that everyone's parents and grandparents had gone to Ivy League schools, and so of course they were going to Dartmouth. Why wouldn't they? And it turns out that my perceptions were accurate. A report in the New York Times published a few months ago revealed that Dartmouth has more students from the top 1% of the income scale than from the entire bottom 60%. Can you believe that? Now, is that because super rich students are more capable and deserving? Or is it because they have access to opportunities, knowledge, connections, and resources that less privileged students do not? So, I felt like an outsider at Dartmouth for being poor, and I realized that the world is not fair, and sometimes it's more about who you know than what you know, or what you have instead of what's in your heart. And I decided to do something about it. If there was anything I learned as a Jack Kent Cooke scholar, it was that your education can change your life. So I studied education and public policy, which helped me to think about the problems in our society and how to solve them. And I began my career working in education. In college, I conducted research with one of my professors in an educational laboratory to try to understand how poverty affects children's brains. I spent a summer in Washington, D.C., helping to lobby Congress and the states to improve education for poor students. I taught 8th graders at a competitive summer program for high-achieving, low-income students, which was especially near and dear to me. And since graduating, I've continued to work in education research, trying to make our schools better able to level the playing field between the rich and the poor. In summary, I've tried to show that poor students are capable of succeeding, that our stories need to be heard, and that we as a society must do better to provide equal opportunities to the 30 million low-income students in this country. Now, why do I tell you all of this? Well, for a few reasons. First, I want you to understand that you are exceptionally fortunate to receive the Jack Kent Cooke Scholarship. One of the greatest things about the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation is its commitment to leveling the playing field for low-income students. That means you will have access to opportunities that most students like us would never have access to, opportunities that can change your life and bring you to fantastic places. What are you going to do with those opportunities? You must not be complacent over these next 4 years. You have an obligation to use these opportunities not only to enrich your own lives, but to identify problems around you and work to solve them. Whether or not that means you work in education or renewable energy or healthcare, you have an obligation to tackle big problems that are meaningful to you. Second, I want you to understand that we, as students from low-income backgrounds, are underrepresented in high-achieving communities. So when you go on to attend prestigious summer programs and boarding schools, conferences, and competitions, you may find that those around you don't share your background. They don't know what struggles you and your families have gone through to get to this point. Moreover, you might find that your father didn't frequent the same country club as your roommate's father, and you might feel awkward about that. But don't for a second feel that you are less deserving or adequate by virtue of not being rich. What this means is that your stories are all the more important and deserve to be told. Trust in your life experiences and allow them to guide your decisions. To that point, I encourage you to avail yourselves of the Jack Kent Cooke community. Come to Jack Kent Cooke events and meetups. Join the Facebook groups. Keep in touch with the other scholars that you meet this weekend. Add each other on Snapchat and follow each other on Instagram. Because it is a special thing to be part of a community that understands the unique challenges and gifts of being high-achieving, low-income students. And there is so much to learn from each other, both personally and professionally. There are Jack Kent Cooke scholars who are applying to college, graduating from college, and teaching college students right now, all over the world. In this digital age, it's so easy to connect with one another and ask questions. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask your advisors questions. You can ask me questions. Finally, I will remind you never to forget where you come from and who helped you along the way. Pay attention to the people and experiences who changed your life and help you grow. I'm honored to welcome you and your families into the Jack Kent Cooke family, and I wish you the very best of luck. Thank you.